right. Welcome to the Take a Seat podcast. This is Mario.
And Clint.
And tonight, we had a conversation with a friend of ours that I guess it could have been the episode, but we'll have it again anyway. Because, frankly, you can't hear it enough, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
Manhood. So, this is not a woke podcast. If you turn this into that type of perspective, that is on you. This is simply exchanging principles about how to conduct, how to live as, and like discussing expectations and what comes with it, with manhood and the responsibilities that evolve as you grow older, or that should evolve. But we'll divulge into that. If you turn this into a different thing about type of sexuality or what even makes a manhood, whatever the case may be, I just clarified the purpose. If you turn it into something else, that's on you. With that being said, so who is somebody that you would say you draw a lot of, not characteristics, but inspiration for that side of you, right? Like how to move in this life as a man.
So two people. The first person, which may be the most obvious, although it may not be the most obvious, unfortunately. And the first person is Jesus, because he literally was the perfect man and the perfect human being, but especially, and I think I'm right to say especially, the perfect man. Yeah, I think I'm right to say that because he was a man. But anyway,
you're talking about the guy that sells fruit off the freeway?
No, that's Jesus. That's Jesus.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
This one was a carpenter. Yeah. Also blue collar worker, but yeah, just different trade.
He paid his taxes.
Yeah.
He actually did. Both.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's wild. Give unto Caesar what's Caesar's. So definitely Jesus. And honestly, he really redefined in my mind what a man was. Because growing up, I idolized men like Tupac, or men like Lil Wayne, or Eminem, or 50 Cent, because, those were the popular rappers at my time, except Tupac. That was just my favorite rapper. And the masculinity that they showed was masculinity, but the motive behind their life purpose wasn't beneficial for society in a way that I think a really true good man would be. So definitely Jordan Peterson. He's my second person. Also because I can tell by his ideologies and by the way he lives his life is that his purpose is greater than himself, and he's living his life to be a benefit to the world in the same way that Jesus lived his life to be a benefit to the world. Although Jesus and Jordan Peterson, there's not really a comparison as to who made the greater impact. Right. Jordan Peterson, give it about 400 years from now, God willing that the world is here 400 years, nobody even may remember the name of Jordan Peterson. But we're now 2022 years from the death of Christ, and we still know this man. And we'll forever know this man, because he wasn't just any man. So, those two men have definitely made the greatest impact. And I hate how I hate how much I talk about Jordan Peterson because it's almost like every conversation I have with somebody, his name gets thrown into there somewhere, but that's just because of how great of an impact he's made on my life at bringing clarity to certain situations, and his education in psychology, because I'm into psychology and he's the one that has broken it down so well. And his life is just impressive. I mean, he's just an impressive man in general. His intelligence is impressive. His character is impressive. So, of course, he was going to make a huge impact on me. But yeah, I would definitely say those two. What about you?
Well, now I would say first and foremost, yeah, I would say Jesus, and that's of course religiously, or at least based on my faith, that would be the number one answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that removing the religious perspective from my eyes and just looking and reading at who this man was,
Mm-hmm.
that in and of itself is something that I find myself wanting to align with. And I say wanting
Yeah.
because I will never amount to whoever, to the standard that this fellow at one point human being
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
I can only aspire to be as good as his Rose. I can never amount to who he was,
Mm-hmm.
and still is.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of Jesus, honestly, I draw a lot of information, inspiration from, and I think this is most guys. You relate and you find yourself, you align yourself with who you relate with the most.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that opens up the door for misguidedness and, just being completely thrown to the left field. But I don't have any one particular guy that I reference. Maybe this is a stretch, but it's only because personalities match in a sense, at least for me.
Yeah.
And that is Joe Rogan.
I knew it. Dude, I was
Joe
waiting
Rogan.
for it.
Yeah, like it's not his ideals, no.
Right.
But his ability to be willing to communicate.
Yes.
And not so much a free spirit, but not closed off at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just willing to, if you don't agree, you're willing to understand at the very least where something or someone comes from. I appreciate the format or personality that is him.
Yeah.
Because you're willing to discuss.
Yeah.
Even if he's wrong, which he is wrong a lot sometimes. And he self-admittedly says that.
Yeah.
But I have an admiration for people that are willing to communicate.
Yeah.
Even if I disagree.
Yeah.
But that would be who I would say, like, maybe not inspiration, but just who I draw a lot of characteristics from. Because I find that drawing that, not saying that I mimic his personality, I'm just saying that I understand willingness to communicate can open a lot of doors for you.
Yeah.
And so I draw that from him, and I listen to the way that people like him also, like in other podcasts and interviews that I've seen for people that are either in the finance sector, real estate sector, life advice sector, like YouTube-wise.
Yeah.
I listen to the way that they communicate and they draw their points and how they present the information they have.
Yeah.
And that's assisted me significantly, of course, by God's grace and God's will. But that aside, I really am grateful that I have the ability to be open and communicate with most people. And I drew that from one, Joe Rogan, but just people that have that similar personality.
Yeah.
But there are definitely parts that I've had to figure out, to one, myself in my life, but two, manhood. And my definition of manhood may not align entirely with what the dictionary manhood definition may be.
Yeah.
Which, matter of fact, let's look it up right now. while everyone's here.
Everyone.
So, manhood, according to Oxford Languages, is the state or period of being a man rather than a child. Let me repeat that for those who get offended by the term manhood. The state or period of being a man rather than a child. Not saying man as an alpha male. We're talking about mental capacity, mental development.
Right.
The moment you stop acting
Right.
and behaving like a child and you decided that you're going to be a grown up, basically. Anything else you apply to that is entirely on the person that interpreted it. So, now, based on that definition, turns out it aligns with my definition, which is basically not necessarily maturity, but willingness to take up for yourself. What's the expression? I think it's something about your weight, carry your weight, or like you don't depend on others to, one, validate yourself, but two, you know how to operate and you know how to navigate as a grown-up, and also on the spectrum of being a man, a physical male. And that's something that I don't think, and I think little by little, in totality, as a society, generations and generations that are coming up of men, physical males, we're losing that.
Yeah.
And I say that not because because I'm not open to, like, no, dude, I'm open to all walks of life. I don't care who identifies as what. I don't care about Leah Thomas. I don't care about Olympic swimmers that are men and all, like, whatever. I get it. Okay, cool. I'm accepting of it. I'm welcoming. It's all good. We differ in that, which is fine. But when this era of dependency on information from the internet and the younger generations that put their entire emotional status and their entire life on social media, that takes a toll on the human development.
Yeah.
Specifically the male human development. Now, I'm about to say a statement. This is just my opinion, and that's it. I've always given leeway to women, or the female anatomy, right? Humans that are females, the leeway to be emotional. Because frankly, I've never had a woman in my life that wasn't emotional in some sense. I'm not saying that every woman's emotional, you're all a mess. No, you just are definitely built differently. That's just how y'all maneuver this life.
Yeah.
So that's not a knock against y'all. That's, if anything, that's like, it's my role, it's my job to understand and be willing to work with you.
Yeah.
That's literally my job.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be male and female procreation. So deal with it. But in this era of information, and this reminds me of a conversation that I had with a coworker that happens to be in a position of power. This coworker worked for two government agencies that were next level, NASA next level. And this is a woman, let me say that. This was a woman in her 50s. So she went and did her thing. She was a career woman for a while, and then she wanted to have kids, left the workforce. She did the whole mom thing for 15 years. Keep that in mind. Elementary, pre-K elementary, middle school, and up to high school, and then now she's back to work. She got bored. But she told me from her mouth, she understood and noticed the dramatic impact that social media is taking on young boys. Now, what qualifies this opinion? Let's just forget the fact that it's an opinion. This woman was a substitute teacher when she started coming back to work. Then she went on to be a full-time teacher. Then she went on to be a full-time professor at an undisclosed university for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
She has her master's in psychology, and she also has a master's or some type of thing in aerial technology, like something like that qualified her for NASA. She had to deal with people and men of all walks, specifically men. And she just was talking about how much she admired the men in her field, just how much it takes to be a person in that, and how she didn't feel that some women or that most women could handle her position because she was up there with the big dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So she was up there swinging at everybody, which good for you, girl. You know, you did your thing.
Yeah.
But she stated it from her mouth. She noticed that her sons didn't know how to operate between other kids. And this took a heavy effect on them when they started using Facebook and Instagram.
You mean
and Twitter.
communication?
Yeah, they had a really bad communication skills with other children. But it wasn't because of her. Like, she was exposing them to going out and sports and everything, but it wasn't enough. And so as they were growing up, keep in mind, this is, they literally, she said they were integrated in technology around 2010, 2011. So these kids are not like, it's not like they were born in 2008 where something may or may not have happened or something like that. Like, you know, that was the beginning of social media, the beginning of technology. Like, no, this is like right when it started taking off.
Right.
So her children were on there, and most parents, they allow their kids to have social media. There's a lot of ignorance where they think the kids, oh, it's just something, they have friends on there, family members and all that. But what you don't know is that the kids are watching information that is consumed by adults.
Mm.
From murders to animal torture, human torture, even things about sexuality and spectrum discussions that their brains are literally not built to handle those conversations at the moment that they're watching them. Maybe when they're like 15, 16, 17, 18, high school, that's when you can start like really like, oh, okay, like diving into that.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair age to where like you can start exploring that ideology, and you're like, you know, you can draw your own conclusions from there. But prior to that, I think it's irresponsible to expose children to things that they don't necessarily understand, especially with something as complex as sexuality. But nevertheless, this is information that they're exposed to, which, okay, cool. It would be fine if there was something to balance it out. Something that would like tell the kid, hey, you don't resort to violence in order to solve a dispute. Yeah. What do you see on social media that sells a lot? Violence.
Yeah.
You don't have to insult people in order to prove a point. What do you see that pops on social media, YouTube? It doesn't even have to follow a particular agenda. It can be anything.
Yeah.
Cussing, language, insults. That's what seems to get this job done.
Yeah.
And so this woman was telling me how she observed her sons, who she raised, and she believes that she does everything accordingly. You know, you're not perfect. No parent is perfect, but you try, of course. And she noticed that her kids were violent, and so she was trying to narrow it down. And she came to the realization that the things that they were seeing on social media and movies and YouTube were developing their kids' habits and how they had certain coping mechanisms or how they behaved in their cognitive and interpersonal abilities.
Yeah. And
that's the end of that story. Tying it into another one, I was hearing a podcast this week about this, there's a prominent female rapper that went on it. Her name is Lotto, or she used to be called Mulatto. She has a lot of controversy, but the point isn't the rapper herself. The point is what she said. They talked about her career. They talked about her progressive. They talked about she's a bad bitch. And of course, yeah, good for you. You know, you're a millionaire, support all that. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You earned it.
Yeah.
But she said from her very mouth, 23 years old, I grew up with social media. I don't know how to just shut up sometimes. This is what I have to do. I have to put it on Twitter. I have to put it on YouTube. I have to put it on Instagram. This is what I was taught to do in navigating this spectrum called life. So I looked at that. And then I started thinking about the other social media personalities, and you start piecing together, like, why do these people feel the need to go to social media? It's a call for attention, fine, but is there a genuine sentiment of, this is what I was taught to do, and so this is what I do because this is what feels normal?
Yeah.
Having interpersonal conversations with people that matter and just keeping stuff offline,
Yeah.
that's not what's being taught. What's being taught is to expose yourself and then just let everybody know your business.
Right.
So now, tying in to manhood, I noticed, even in some people that I know now, the impact that not having guidance, not having someone tell you, hey, go ahead and put that phone down. Let's go for a walk. I need to talk to you. That interaction in and of itself can be the difference between how somebody reacts to emotional situations.
Yeah.
Because instead of them being taught, go throw shade on them on Instagram and Twitter to all your friends so that everybody knows what's going on, instead of doing that, they learn to communicate verbally and of course be sad in person and cry, whatever it is they have to do. You develop better coping mechanisms. But you're seeing more and more. You can look at YouTube, you can go to Reddit, whatever social media platform. You see more and more crime being committed by younger men, specifically men. And of course, crime has always existed. I'm not saying that this is just the beginning, that, that this is, social media is the only culprit, but I think that misguidedness, I think that lack of someone to teach manhood, maturity, how to navigate those lines, is what's making the biggest impact on society as we know it right now. And I don't know how exactly you're supposed to change it outside of, you raise your kids your way. Because it's interesting, if you try to correct someone else's child or even give advice to another adult,
Right.
if that adult is not mature, is not somebody that navigates manhood the way that you as a man navigate manhood, they're not going to understand what you're trying to tell them.
Yeah.
They're just going to see it as, that's your opinion and that's it.
Right.
Instead of listening to the information and actually absorbing it and just, at the very least, considering the possibility.
Yeah.
Granted, that's not just something you can attest to being a man. That's something you can attest to being mature, which
Right.
by definition, that's what we're talking about too.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, and I think we're going to progressively, over the next 10 years, see this new wave of men that come into society that are a lot more emotional, that are a lot less cognitively able to be in social interactions or even to be in professional environments. And I think the old school ways that, of course, I'm not talking about racist, but like
Right.
some old school views are there for a reason.
Right.
Like not making your business public.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why that's instilled into, or that's preached about, and that's preached about now from celebrities, but they're celebrities. You're doing it for attention.
Right.
But part of the reason that's saying is there. Yeah, got sidetracked. We're back. Another aspect of all of this is a conversation that you and I had with a police sergeant, which of course we're not going to reveal anything other than that. And I brought up the point of, I'm curious to see this next wave within the next 5 to 10 years of male candidates that come into the police force, especially with the exposure that they've had of recent events, really, where you now have more than ever before this negative perspective of police, which we're not here to talk about police, but the stigma is there. That can be very much agreed on. So you have this next wave of male humans that are supposed to be the maintainers of quote unquote order in society.
Yeah.
And little do we know that they're all traumatized and they're all scared, or they all have different coping mechanisms and different ways of behaving and knowing how to treat certain situations in certain manners, whatever the case may be, simply because they were not taught how to operate. And not necessarily maturity, but just like how not to be over emotional or how not to overexpose yourself, whatever the case may be.
Are you talking about specifically in the law enforcement field?
Yes, like I'm curious to see like how the law enforcement field will train this next wave of human beings, because it's a completely different cognitive development that they're growing up in.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and I don't know, nor do I have a guide of like who you should follow and who you should listen to. But having the appropriate counsel for manhood and maturity and decision making is a necessity of sorts.
Yeah.
But you also have an increase of neglect from parents. I think most people that I know have negative receptions to the experiences they had as kids. It seems like everybody's parent was neglectful in some emotional way, specifically emotional. Now, this isn't everybody. I'll just throw a random statistic based on my experience. Out of 10 people, 6 of them are in some way messed up.
Yeah.
And it comes down strictly and deliberately to the parents.
Yeah.
And not having somebody that educates you and that shows you the ropes, basically. And I'm curious, like, how you're supposed to go about that. How are you, if you're a 17-year-old kid, the junior, senior, you grow up the way I did, you're in the hood, you have your homies around you, y'all smoke weed because that's what's cool. Look at me sounding old. But you don't have parents that call you out because that's just the way it is in some Hispanic communities, where you just kind of like accept it and your parents just kind of take a step aside and just let you do your own thing. How are you supposed to break out of that? Like, how are you supposed to find the information that allows you to break out of that to begin with? I mean, I took the initiative and I went to go look for it.
Right, same.
But if you don't have that initiative and that wasn't instilled in you and you don't have that desire, then how do you go about finding that?
Right.
And that's something that I think is interesting to look at. Because I really do believe that a lot of the behaviors that some people that I know, but also that you see on social media, a lot of it can be attested to lack of figure on how to navigate manhood. And that can be from behavior to finances to just being a good, decent human being, you know?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all that? I know there was quite a bit to take into account, but I think it's all relevant to the same thing.
I think we both can agree that men are the reason why we're in the situation that we're in right now.
Yes.
It's the lack of accountability men have had throughout the years for their actions, or the lack of foresight as far as what sort of consequences may come from their decisions. in the long term, because they may be seeking short-term pleasure or short-term gain, and not really counting the cost that it could have for generations to come. And you know, man, like I really, I don't have a solution. I think life is the greatest teacher. And you know, I heard a quote. Actually, Anthony's the one that said this quote, which it's a famous quote. It's not like he created it, but and I'm not even going to quote it perfectly either. But the quote is basically something along the lines of difficult times create strong men create like
easy times, and then easy times create weak men.
And then easy times create weak men, then weak men create. Yeah, so it's like this cycle, and it keeps on repeating, right? And right now we're in the generation of weak men, because men aren't taught the values of masculinity, and masculinity in society is actually painted as something negative nowadays.
Yeah,
it's seen as something toxic, which, I mean, it can be.
Yeah, of course.
But that's like with anything. It's like money is not evil, but if you use it in the wrong way, you can use it for evil, or you can use it for good, in the same way that masculinity can be used for good, or masculinity can be used for evil. Superman's character was actually based off of Jesus Christ, if you didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah. And which, I mean, it kind of makes sense. He comes from another planet. He's now the savior of this world, in the sense. He's this not man, but yet he's also man at the same time.
Did he have a big chest?
I'm sure Jesus said, no, that's stupid. Let me not say stuff like that. But yeah, and it's like Superman was a masculine man, right? He also possessed, I guess, what you could call feminine qualities as well, because if you look at like Eastern philosophy, compassion is actually not something that's in the masculine category. Compassion is on the feminine category of...
Really?
Yeah. Which, I mean, Jesus, being a perfect human being, he possessed the perfect right amount of masculine and feminine qualities. But in the same way, Superman did as well. And it's like, a good man is somebody that's capable of great destruction, but is wise enough and restrained enough to use that strength that he has for the betterment of society as a whole, right? And I don't know how you can... I don't know how what the solution is. I don't know if it's actually education, or if it's simply... Because, I mean, I was young, and when I was young, I wasn't looking up to these honorable men. I was looking up to the thugs, the drug dealers, the gangsters. I was looking up to them, and I paid more honor to them than I did actually honorable men, such as like a Martin Luther King type.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I always had a reverence for Jesus, although I really didn't know him. I think it was more of just indoctrination from my, I guess, family in a way, or just... I was raised in the West, and you're taught that Jesus or Christianity is the right religion, right? And I believe it's the right religion, but I don't believe it's the right religion because I've been indoctrinated to believe that anymore through some sort of like societal pressure. Now I actually believe it because I sought it for myself, but that's besides the point. I don't know, man. There may not actually be a solution for this, and we're thousands of years, or possibly millions of years of humanity, and we've always gone through these cycles where men were great, men sucked. Men were great, men sucked. Men were great, men sucked. It's like times of war, times of peace, times of war, times of peace, times of war, times of peace. And I'm not exactly sure if even education is going to solve that necessarily. I think that suffering causes us to man up.
Yeah.
And I think women are the greatest benefit to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, this life would be nothing without.
Yeah, dude. Like we
women.
wouldn't shower.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even get dressed. We wouldn't. You think skyscrapers were built for us? No. If it was just men, we would still be living in freaking tents and having fire that we're just standing around. Dude, I don't know. We'd probably kill each other. Honestly,
I think so.
I don't see like the reason why we have lights while it's dark outside. The reason why we have the shelters that we have, it's all for women. Like women are our greatest motivation, and I think women play a major role in helping us become the men that we're supposed to be, because they clearly can see our insecurities and they'll poke at it and they'll try us. And that trying is a constant reminder of you're not who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're not who you're supposed to be. You're greater than this. I chose you because of who you're supposed to be. You know, and like I think women are such a value to society. In you know, dude, I was talking with somebody here at the shop. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. It was this week. And this is definitely gonna trigger warning, because I know some people are gonna be ticked off about this. But I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying that there is a facet of truth behind this. And he asked this group of women, because he was on one of those. I don't remember what this app is called, but it's this app where it's like this big meeting room where Clubhouse. Yeah, that's it. He was on Clubhouse, and women were like, they're entrepreneurs and this and that, and like they're doing their thing and they're successful women. And one of the guys was like, "Hey, we haven't heard from you at all during this conversation." And he was like, "Well, I have a question for the ladies." And he was like, who's the most valuable piece in chess? And the women were like, the queen. He was like, no, I didn't ask who the most powerful piece is. I asked who the most valuable piece is. At the end of the day, it's the king, because the game doesn't finish until you've overtaken the king. And as powerful as women are, it's not about them being the most valuable piece. The women's strength is to benefit the man. And it's like, women are intelligent. They're easily as capable of anything that a man is capable of doing, to a certain extent, besides physical capabilities. But then again, I also heard a quote, and I think this was actually Joe Rogan. And but Joe Rogan had said, oh shoot. Somebody had said, "Oh well, okay." Joe Rogan said something along the lines of, "It's not that women can't physically do what men can do; it's that men can't do what men can do." Meaning that there's a small percentage of men that all of the strongest people in the world are men. But the majority of men aren't as strong as that percentage of men. So when you see these like, when we look at like transgender athletes entering into the opposite sex's sport, it's like, and you see these men dominating, it's like men were just built different. Yeah. And ultimately, I say that all of the power that a woman has really just helps the man become who he's supposed to be. And I think that women are extremely important. And that may sound as though it's not a lesser role. And that's what I don't want to be confused. It's just a different role.
Yeah.
It's like men will never be anything admirable without women. If there were no men, we wouldn't be admirable at all, because women are our motivation for doing everything. Even if it's to have children, it's like you can't even have a child unless you're able to be the type of man that a woman would even choose.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, but I don't know. I don't really see. I think education is important, and I think that it's good to have father figures in schools and teaching principles, and having great mentors and all of that stuff. But I think that sometimes, like, at least I'll speak for me, like me as a teenager, it's like I could have had that admirable man come to me and give me the game, but I just wasn't in a position to hear it, because I admired a different type of masculinity that was actually a toxic masculinity, because it seemed more appealing. Even though ultimately, if it was broken down to me correctly, I would find out that no, this is not even beneficial for myself to live like a toxic man. Even though it may seem like I've got more money, more women, more whatever, it's like at the end of the day, you don't actually gain true fulfillment because you're living for yourself. And the only way you can actually gain true fulfillment is being focused on being a living sacrifice. Your life being a sacrifice for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I've heard that the East has pretty down pat, is that in the East, they don't quite understand the West's philosophy of this every man for himself type of mentality, where it's like a dog eat dog world, and this storing up all of this wealth for yourself and climbing to the top. It's more of they gain happiness through giving rather than happiness through obtaining and keeping and storing up. Whereas the West is more about storing up and having status through how much you have attained rather than how much you contribute. But anyway, yeah, that's what I think. But I am curious to know what would you say are the most important qualities that a man should have to be able to even consider himself a man?
So this is where I can open up the spectrum, at least now, in accordance to my views.
Yeah.
Taking it outside of the definition.
Okay.
Because there have been, it's a real thing. There are plenty of men that consider themselves a man just because of the physical attributes, but behave themselves so immorally, or they don't take care of the kids, for example, and that to me is not a man. I think qualities that make you quote unquote a man are accountability.
Yeah.
One of the main ones.
Agreed.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
Willingness to talk.
Yeah.
And this one is a little controversial in the world of men, is being able to understand and communicate with emotions.
Yeah.
So not being like, well, this made me mad, so I'm going to shut down on you, and that's going to prove it to you, which just leads to more conflict.
Yeah.
I think having that emotional control, puts men in a better standing than reacting emotionally, per se. Now, that's just like behavioral attributes. What makes you a man, now considering like morals and now considering like how you maneuver, is taking care of your kids, for example, or understanding your role sometimes. I think that, for example, between the ages of 18 till about 25, 26, most men are on the train of fast, 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 go, 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 go. Like, let's just move on to the next thing, next chick, next job, next
Yeah.
thing. Let's get to the grind. Let's get to whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it might be let's go from weed to coke to crack, and then et cetera, et cetera. And it isn't until you hit a certain age that even I've met some actual drug addicts that have this thought process, but because of their addiction, they're not able to behave in a accountable manner per se.
Mm-hmm.
But there comes a point where the male mind actually finishes developing and the switch kind of goes off.
Yeah.
The switch doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a stable life. It doesn't guarantee you'll have a wife, a girlfriend, a kids, whatever. But what it does do is it ignites that next level of consciousness, which is awareness of yourself.
Yeah.
And what comes with that can either be resentment for yourself in the world or openness and willingness to advance in your stage of manhood. Prime example is like Kanye West, for example. So Kanye West, from my perspective, remove the music.
Mm-hmm.
His behavior alone is already, obviously most people have seen the documentary, but the way the guy maneuvers tells me, yeah, you didn't have a dad. I know you didn't have a dad. I can just tell by the way that you react to certain situations.
Yeah.
You don't need to have the money to react like that. If you looked at the documentary, the guy is exactly who he is now, pre-money.
Yeah.
But did he have to be that way? Mm-hmm. Would it actually have made a difference if he had a father in his life that showed him the ropes, right? Or how to take accountability or how to not get emotional about certain situations or any situation.
Yeah.
But then you could also present the argument, well, if he had a dad, there'd be no Kanye West.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah. Because he's a great entertainer.
Yeah. Entertainer.
He would not be as entertaining if he wasn't the Kanye that we know. And he definitely wouldn't be as successful as he is if he wasn't such a loose cannon.
No. But I think that...
Not to say that's good. Not to say that that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's subjective, really, and it just depends on how you look at it. Our definition or my definition of manhood may differ entirely from Kanye's. Like, Kanye might see it as, if you don't have $1 billion, you're not a man. Because he can freely take care of his family and do whatever he wants. So from his perspective, that might be what defines a man, and not somebody that has a good character, that's someone that has good morals and is respected in his community.
Do you think that that's what he thinks?
I would think so.
Really?
Yeah. I think that Kanye and people like him see money as a validation for being a man. I think that, my opinion is that people like him take advantage of the fact that they know that there's one thing that everybody's after as just in this modern era, which is money.
Yeah.
If you don't have a certain amount of money, then you're not a man.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hear that a lot in the dating world.
Yeah.
Where as a man, if you don't make a certain figure, or even if, forget the fact that you can make a figure. If you don't make the perception of you that of somebody that can make a figure, then you're not a man, you're unattractive, and you're not a good partner, basically. Granted, we all know some guy that's a bum, probably has nothing going for their life, but they drive a truck. And so according to their world, they're a man because they drive this 4x4 they can barely afford.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that is an alignment with the views of Kanye West and that side of the spectrum, where it all comes down to perception and monetary gain to determine your character, instead of your character being the determinant of your perception.
I actually don't think Kanye thinks that makes him a man. I think that makes him feel valuable. I don't think that it necessarily makes him feel like he's a man. I actually don't even think that a lot of his striving for was to prove that he was a man. I think a lot of it had to do with striving to prove that he's valuable or important.
Worthy.
Yeah, worthy. Yeah, I think that he's just insecure.
Right.
And that he saw that, okay, if I get money, I'll be seen as something worth fill in the blank.
Right.
Right. But because I think that he admires a lot of people that also didn't have a lot of money.
Probably does.
And I think that at least I want to say new Kanye, although new Kanye has a whole lot of old Kanye that needs to be worked out clearly.
I mean, he's 47. He's done at this point, dude.
What are you talking about, dude?
47?
What do you mean done?
He's done. Like, he's not going to evolve into anything, quote unquote, more mature. Not better, but mature.
You think this is the max of maturity that he's going to gain?
Yeah, definitely.
Are you kidding me?
No, because society has rewarded him for his behavior.
Right.
They have rewarded him for behaving in a way that exudes ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
You can be the smartest businessman in the world, but you're ignorant to maturity and just having basic conversations. So, no, I don't think there's going to be this. Heck, actually, if anything, his moment of clarity where he could have turned the perception of him into a mature one was when he went this whole Jesus route, which I don't believe anymore, frankly, and based on the way he's maneuvering. But when he went on this whole Jesus is King phase,
right,
where it was peaceful and loving, and it's all about God, which, I mean, it should be that way anyway. But that, to me, was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is a different side that's non-egotistical. Of course, he's an artist, so he's still got to put music out. Yeah. But it didn't seem like it was coming from a genuine, mature, evolved version of himself. Because if it was, you wouldn't be behaving the way that you're behaving now. Or even last year.
I disagree. I'm glad we're on this topic, by the way.
Sure.
But I disagree. And the reason I say that is because over the course of, I guess it is now 13 years of me being a Christian. Mm-hmm. There's been times where I've done a good job as a Christian. Right? But then the times where I acted the least like a Christian were the times that I was going through the most trials. So whenever I had went through my 6-year relationship and was going through a breakup, all of a sudden I started going through this phase where I started to behave in a way that you wouldn't think that I even knew Jesus, right? Mm. And then even times where I felt extremely lonely and depressed, and I think that what he's doing right now, so a pattern that we see with Kanye is his mother dies. Then he turns into St. Pablo Yeezus Kanye, where it's like ego to a whole nother level. I am a god, like comparing himself to the greatest people ever, quote unquote, and just living this indulgent lifestyle even greater than what he was previously, trying to seek some sort of comfort and, like you were saying, validation, feeling worthy. And I think that now this divorce that he's going through with Kim is just bringing out that same human nature that's still left in him. And I still believe that he is a Christian, even though he's not behaving like one right now. But I think he's just so caught up in the emotion, because out of emotion, I've done some stupid stuff and dated women that I knew I shouldn't have dated, led people on in a way that I knew I shouldn't have done. I mean, there's plenty of things that I knew I was wrong to do, but I just, I mean, and I may be wrong. Who knows? Maybe this whole Jesus thing with him was disingenuous and was some sort of new tactic to get attention, and maybe it was just purely for monetary gain. But maybe I'm also biased in the sense that because I've done similar things because of me being hurt, despite me being a Christian, and acted erratically and uh, and what's the word? Uh, just behaving without actually thinking, reactive rather than responding to situations. Uh, I can relate to it, and I'm like, well, this is nothing new. And I can say that about every Christian that I actually know on a personal basis, where I've seen them live this holy, godly life and then have this moment where they're just hit with so much of a stress on their life that they start to resort back to their old ways of handling situations rather than what the Christ-like thing is to do. But anyway, time will tell. Time will tell. We'll see how long this Jesus is King era lasts in his life. I pray that it's forever and that he is truly living for Christ, because he has the capability of making such a huge impact in everything in the world, in society, in music, I mean, in art. He's just one of those artists that end up in the top fives of many people,
Right.
in the hip hop community, and I think that says something.
I pray that as a collective, as a human race, at some point it becomes popular to not want to take on the personality of celebrities or take on the personality or traits that are not just negative in the sense of like society's norms, but also self-detrimental. Like wanting, lusting after attention, whether it's from
Yeah,
the general public, or a specific person,
yeah,
or just wanting something drawn out of ego. Now, this can be entirely, my opinion is obviously just my own and it's based on my experiences, but I think that it would be beneficial to us as a whole, as a man, as a mature human, to make it popular to say there's nothing wrong with not being rich. There's nothing wrong with not being the most popular. There's absolutely nothing wrong with not even being emotional, just being a normal human being.
yeah,
I mean, that's what most of us are going to be anyway. Like, we're the
Right.
movie star of our own movie, but
yeah.
nobody cares about the sequel because there isn't one actually in
Mhm.
this case. But
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
we're only relevant to those around us. Outside of that, you don't exist.
Yeah,
And it is my belief that it's going to get worse. I think we're going to start seeing more
I agree.
more lashing out from men reacting to a breakup or a girl
Yeah.
that simply doesn't
Yeah.
like them back.
Yeah,
Something as simple and innocent as a woman expressing herself freely and saying, "You're ugly, I don't want you." Doesn't matter if she's mean or not. That's just her view on it, and it's fair. Sure, she could rephrase it, but whatever. But and I think it's only going to get worse, especially with the evolution of society, with the evolution of social media, the introduction of VR, the introduction of the metaverse, and having these filters instilled on us. Filters in the sense of you can go on the internet and be anybody,
yeah,
but in real life be a bum
right.
entirely.
Yeah,
Heck, you can even be a politically aligned person with one party online, but in real life you vote the other way.
Mhm.
And I think with the further integration of technology into our behavioral science of humans, it will only corrupt us even more and lead to further destructive behavior, frankly. I think at one point it's going to get to where empathy will not be a common behavior. I think that genuine care will become a commodity instead of a everyday necessity from everybody. And it's interesting and it's weird for me because it's obviously I believe that I behave in the ways that some may perceive to be mature, or some may perceive that like, oh yeah, that's a stand-up guy, like he's not the type of guy to go after things unnecessarily, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I think that we're frankly doomed, to be honest, and I don't think there's anything that we can actually do about it, because it would quite literally take at least all of the U.S. to everybody say, the people like Kanye, all of a sudden, you know what, dude, you don't represent us, man. Like, that's not how we're moving out here. So ain't nobody's going to buy your album or your clothes. Until something as significant as that, which will never happen because most people don't care. Most people are in their own world. And it's okay. It's 100% valid, but I think it's just going to get worse. I think where we are will, like the city that we're in, may potentially become the next New York, where crime just increased out of nowhere and you're not even safe to walk down the street in your own neighborhood. But I have no idea how to fix it. I don't even, and I think I agree with you. I don't think education will be enough. I think there would have to be this huge pivot that happens that changes the way that people think and operate. Something as, God forbid, of course, but war.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
It's going to take something as drastic as that, like that, to get people to unite and get back to what matters. Is Kanye really going to matter if he has to go die in the battlefield? No. He's not going to matter because he's not there to sing and kill people with his horrible vocals. He doesn't have horrible vocals. I'm just saying.
I think his vocals actually suck, except he knows how to produce well, and his auto-tune is pretty good. But
I think I agree. But the gist of it is I think, to conclude this and end it, I think what I would say is, if you're listening to this and you want to, and you're looking for, okay, well, how can I improve as a man? Because I also think that at some point every man thinks to himself, what am I doing? Where am I? Like in life, whatever, you can be living at home, you can have your own apartment. I think everybody has that. Some call it a coming to Jesus moment, but basically that self-realization moment. At some point, and if you're there now, I would say pursue that which helps you grow. And by growth, I mean positive to you. Most of us can gauge when something's not positive. Like, I'm not saying go out there and look up necromancy and look up things that are in alignment to your retaliatory behavior. No, darn well that's not what I'm talking about. I think that you should go out there, go read some behavioral books, go watch some testimonies of people and how they changed their life. And if that is the stage of your life where you're at, where you're wanting to change something, or you're seeking something has to happen, because clearly nothing's happened up until now, and that's led to nothing. Go out there and look for the answers. Because I don't think they're going to come to you. That's, I think, part of the reason why a lot of just people in general become stagnant. You just kind of stay in the same spot forever, and you die off and you just become a memory to those that cared for you.
Yeah.
And with time, you die off. So I think go find the answers that align with mutual growth for you physically, mentally, and hopefully you can have a positive impact on somebody.
Mm.
But outside of that, I think that's the best that you actually can do.
Yeah. To add to that, I think do what's right even when no one is looking, and do what's right for the whole of society, even if it's not beneficial to you.
Yeah.
Even if it's to your own detriment. It's like Jesus, for instance, it's like it was not to his own benefit that he suffers on a cross, but he was focused on what was actually beneficial to society as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think that's truly masculine, like righteous masculinity. It's like, okay, living your life as a sacrifice for the betterment of everybody around you and everybody through the lineage of those that were around you that'll benefit from your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I don't know, but you know, I guess one thing that's not sitting well with me right now is the thought that, like, I'm not doom and gloom in the sense of, well, it's going to get worse and there's nothing we can really do about it. Because I think that if we actually live like we believe that, then the outcome is only going to be destruction. It's like, for instance, let's say that you believe, oh, well, you know what? I might as well just live on welfare for the rest of my life because no matter what, there's nothing I can really do to make any more money. It's like, that's not true. In the same way that it's not true that we can't make the world a better place, even if it is in the smallest possible way, we can still make it better than it was if we didn't exist. So I don't think that all hope is lost for humanity in the sense of, because something has to fight against evil, and if all of the good people just think, oh, well, you know what, evil is just going to keep on persisting and it's going to win, and men are going to forever be grown children and there's nothing we can really do about it, and we actually believe that, then nobody's going to do anything about it. And then all we're going to do is have a self-fulfilling prophecy where men end up being grown children and nobody's ever going to take on that responsibility that they're called to as men. So I think that even if it looks like all hope is lost, we should live as though we have the capability of making a change. And if every man lived as though we're capable of making a change, I think that we'll be in more peaceful times and men will be better men and society will flourish. But yeah, it just seemed really nihilistic, like life has no meaning and everything is purposeless, so why even try at all? That's how it kind of felt, even though I don't think that that's exactly what you were getting at.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's more of accepting it. Because, I mean, it's not being nihilistic. I think it's being realistic, though I understand why it can come off as nihilistic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more so just like accepting it, and just the best I can do is spread my perspective, teach it to those that would come after me, aka kids.
Yeah.
Bestow that information on my partner, and just hope that that's something that can be relayed over to the next person.
Mhm.
But I think currently, I mean, and I stand on that. I think that as a whole, as a human race, or maybe even the U.S. population alone, we're kind of messed up.
Oh, we're super messed up.
We're really in a bad
But we've always
position.
been messed up. Like, since the beginning of time, we've been messed up. Like, racism, slavery, war, freaking sacrificing babies on altars. Like, we've just been a screwed up people since the dawn of time. And that's just the way it's always been. And I think that's the way it's always going to go. Like you said, it's like, that's just realistic.
Yeah.
But I think that it's also like, okay, well, just because that's the way that it's always been doesn't mean that we shouldn't. It's also always been that there's been the few that have not followed the crowd and have made the difference. Because you and me, we wouldn't even be doing this podcast if we didn't think we were making some sort of difference with this podcast for the good.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that there's also a substantial amount of people that are not showing up on the news, that are doing amazing things with their life.
Oh, of course.
That are benefiting society in a way that we don't see because it's not sellable.
Yeah.
You know, it's not exciting.
Yeah.
It's like nobody cares that you donated $1 million to the homeless. Who cares? What we want to see is the dude who shot up the school.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what's going to really get our attention.
Yeah.
When everything's, you know, me and Danae, I showed her this relationship video, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship video was this man cleans the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the dog ends up rolling on the carpet, and there's dog hair on the carpet. The wife comes home, and the way that we're programmed as human beings is not to look at whatever is going right. It's to look at the things that are wrong because we're here to fix what's wrong, right? So she comes in and sees, oh my God, look at all this dog hair on the carpet. What the heck are you doing, husband? You just let the dog out and let him mess up the carpet? And meanwhile, it's like, you don't see that I clean the entire house? This place is spotless, but you're focusing on the carpet, right? And it's like, that's how we're wired. This is why the news is still a thing, and why good things don't show up on the news, because it's like, we don't care if everything is going right. If everything's going right, that's cool. We can relax. But if everything's going wrong, it's like, oh shoot, now we actually have a job to do.
I feel that. I see that. I think with that being said, it's all hopeless. Screw everybody. Nah, just go out there and be the best version of yourself. That's all you can do, really,
Yeah.
and spread the message that best fits and aligns with that. And I'll be praying for all y'all, man, because even I need it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. We're all human in the end.
Mm-hmm.
We're entitled to our mistakes and our flaws. We can only hope to get better.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I thank all of y'all for listening, tuning in.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here after this long break, and I look forward to being here again.
Yes.
Yeah. So, with that being said, this is Mario.
And Clint.
And we're out.